Hello everyone, I cannot speak louder than this, but hopefully my voice is loud enough for you to hear what I'm saying. The title of tonight's episode is The Fog of Cruelty. Realistically, I cannot speak about all dimensions. It's a vast concept, but I'm going to introduce to you how I've approached it. The fog of cruelty in the minds of men is a suggestion of a sort of behavioral pattern in the mind of our species. What that means is it's not limited to the shape of the human being, it has to do with the human position. Because we are temporary beings. We value things in intense ways. Our time becomes valuable only when we are temporary. If you were an eternal being, playfully we are considering this, if you were immortal, being, nothing would have value for you. You would pretty much look at life and you would see that because you remain, there is nothing that you can miss. Alexander the Great, there's a story about it. He has conquered everything. He has become the great conqueror. One thing Alexander the Great realizes he has not conquered. The only thing that he felt was left was time. He noticed though a conqueror named Time conquers all. It is pretty much the only observer of history is Time. Alexander the Great decides to find the fountain of youth. He decides to become immortal. He decides to conquer death. He asks his assistants or whatever to find him the fountain of youth. Eventually his men find the fountain of youth, but it is located in a cave like in the middle of a cliff, a wall of the cliff. Alexander the Great enters. He climbs the thing alone. He enters the cave, random cave in the middle of the cliff, and he enters and he sees the most beautiful, like the most purest water fountain, natural fountain. He goes to drink, and he hears a voice. The voice is the voice of a crow. The crow tells him, don't drink it. To be honest, first he doesn't see the crow. He hears a voice, then he goes to drink again. He hears the crow tell him that don't do it. He asks the crow why. And the crow says, I was a person and I drank this from the fountain of youth and I became an immortal crow. What it means is immortality is the idea that your external existence is continuing. Eternity is the idea that your inner existence is continuing eternally. So Alexander the Great he suddenly got this realization that the continuity of external reality can also lead to misery. You know, being you can feel, you can suffer by feeling you haven't lived enough, and you can also suffer by feeling you have lived long enough, too long. So Alexander the Great, I mean, after climbing that cliff, you must be thirsty, right? But he doesn't drink it, and he comes down, and he understands the power of nature. It knows when to exit. And when you get comfortable with this notion that there will be an exit, your fear kind of fades. Not completely. I mean, there's different types of fear. There is an intelligent fear. And that means if you don't have that fear, you're not aware of your external reality. Then there's a fear that's based on your inner environment. Your inner environment changes in accordance to external reality, but also in accordance to the language and the various images that pass through your attention. The fog of cruelty in man's mind and in the minds of men is a suggestion that we are self-centered, and cruelty is the ultimate selfish act. This is why it can be done. When a person is cruel, they actually have a blindfold on. There's a box in their head, so they become a juggernaut of intensity, not in a good way. How many times have you seen anger in people, and that anger has the person convinced that he's justified to do what he thinks he should do? You see, your relationship with your thoughts is important, but there are always extremes in any moment of change. You cannot change without confronting an extreme. Kind of like how Lao Tzu would say, you have to let go of who you are now to really become who you are meant to be. You know? So that idea, it's been a hard one for me personally, because the comfort in youth is to assume the world doesn't change. But the comfort of the mature, the existentially mature, I'm not talking about behavior. Behavior doesn't matter. What you're seeing behind your eyes is what matters. And what you're seeing behind your eyes is how, through language, you make the world come alive. You see, it's not. Um, it's easy to be cruel. This is why it doesn't seem to be the right action. It's easy to be destructive and evil. That's why it doesn't feel like it's the ultimate option. I remember hearing that statement that says home is where the heart is. And that statement is a statement that I've seen various dimensions to it. You see, my relationship with language, once you find the distance between you and your beliefs, you will start seeing them multidimensionally. So imagine you're a child, you're being raised in this world. As you're being raised in this world, you have a singular opinion. You feel you're in one world. You feel it's like this. It's kind of like you're friends with someone, and then suddenly in their behavior, you see the ulterior, uh, their ulterior motives, their ulterior intentions. Yeah, I'll give you an example. right now, as I'm speaking to you, what tends to happen is that the words I say, I speak something, when I say it, prior to that, behind my eyes, there's a motion in the landscape. So you see, imagination is how your attention moves in your inner reality. It's kind of funny. Externally, your attention is the world. Internally, it is all the ways that the world could be and can be and have been. So what I'm trying to say is that people are not just who you see. They are there's many versions of their own self kind of floating around in their existential consciousness. You see, your experiential consciousness, experiential, I have to distinguish between the two or I can't speak about it. Pretty much in this life, there's two ways to kind of tackle the unknown. You divide and conquer, you unify, or you unify and unite by bringing freedom. So either we are inspired by a collective freedom, or we are inspired by a sort of individual. It's like the moment. There's this saying in ancient wisdom. I believe the concept was more alive in dervish culture. But the idea was, not just in dervish culture, many mystical cultures, the idea was that, guys, please let me know in the chat that my voice is loud enough and you can hear what I'm saying. Anyways. You see, your mind, you can't communicate with it dualistically. You cannot get your mind, you cannot attempt to approach your inner reality as if it's the external, or you will just see the external. You see, it's not just about what is in our sensory data. It is about how the moment's totality is occurring. And so trust me, there's ways you can exist where you're not just centered in your body. You think your attention is just locked in your physical body. Your attention at its most, the upper echelon of your consciousness, your true being, trust me, your relationship with yourself will no longer be in language or as an idea. You will start learning from the secret ebbs and flows of your direct experience. In dervish culture, it was a sort of it's as if it was like evil, ego, and cruelty and suffering was a symptom of a being rejected by the rhythms of nature, by the divine will. Okay, so an ego was the result of rejection of truth. It's as if the person felt they can't first, and because they felt they can't, they felt they only can in a certain way. You see, in every moment you are bringing the moment to life. You are the life of every moment you have existed in. Once you understand this, you notice you are like a flame. Okay, you're like a candle flame. Okay, your consciousness, ever since you were born, it's like there's something burning up here. And what is burning up is experience. The experience is like a fire. Right now, consciousness, it appears to be kind of like the fire element. That means it changes. It's like there's just like how fire and heat were used in medicine to disinfect, for example, tools. Similarly, it's as if like your mind is burning for the next moment. And so this candle, just like in units of candela, and if you want to get scientific about it, like just a candle, like enough candle, like a room. How can I say it? It's like somebody put a candle in a room and that was a measurement. There is a light you're giving off, and your karma is the result of how your attention aligns your energetic expression throughout the day. But it also has to do with a sort of as if you are not just born in an inanimate world, you are born in the mind of the cosmos. You are a citizen of the intelligence of the cosmos. There are certain creatures, certain phenomena that are not. You see, all measurements have stepped out of the moment of being where consciousness occurs. You see, on some level, I look at the sky and I see my true nature is limitless, and there's some moments where I look at the earth and I see its limitations. And so it's kind of like you limitlessly live in a limited way. It's as if your body is temporary, but your mind, who said it's temporary? Who said the mind dies? The true mind of the being. Because the soul was always unknown. You go into any traditions, I mean, of course, we think of ghosts or whatever as souls or whatever, lost souls, but I'm telling you, that's just playful imagination. To some degree, what it is it is due the unknown value of the moment that there comes the presence of the soul. That means the best way to kind of intellectually figure out if the concept of the soul has true value or not is to realize that it is an unknown movement in the moment. Now, science is doing something unique. You see, science and religion are at war because they fail to understand that they can coexist in different rooms. You see, we already are as people. Like when you are in society, obviously you're not the same way you are when you're like singing in the shower. You know what I mean? So what I'm saying is there's a multidimensionality at work based on the various levels of subjective self-existence and self-consideration. You see, you're not like the person's sight is not like Cyclops or like Superman or something. You know, your sight is absorption. So your sensory, what you think is your sensory data, is actually the presence of intelligence. That's it. And if the presence of intelligence has an unknown cause, the effects will never understand it. It's just like the ant underneath my feet cannot know why I go to work. You know. Every person brings with them various moments of existence that influence the overall civilization. I have noticed that cruelty happens when opportunity is denied. And when opportunity is denied, that becomes a justification for no one to have the opportunity. You see, what is violence? Violence is the denial of the opportunity of the existence of the moment of another. Trust me, we're all on a rock in the middle of nowhere, going through a tough time. The species is like the humanity's violence is so unnecessary that extraterrestrials, like, imagine how many extraterrestrials came on the top of our mountains and looked at us. Imagine, I'm saying this playfully. Imagine. And they were like, holy shit, human beings are too animalistic. Look at them fight over their own beliefs, not realize every person has their own eyes in a world that is one moment. This is the chaos of the truth. You see, there's some people, chaos is their teacher. The violent man, his life energies are taking him towards chaos. It's as if literally that being doesn't care about anything aside from being active in a way that's self-gratifying. It's one of the hardest things to do, to see beyond yourself. And very few people can, because when you do, you're no longer a self. You evolve and you graduate into a moment of being. When you graduate into a moment of being, this is kind of like the difference, they say, in the sort of two different kinds of virtue, or innocence. Two types of virtue. One type of it is innocence, is the child's innocence. And then there's the mature man's innocence. And these are two different things and two different pathways in yogic thought. That means, for example, children, they are innocent because they don't know, right? But there are some people who know and act accordingly, act with a certain contentment of how the world has chosen to walk like that day. The idea follows that you don't get worried about the suffering in this world because it's just a part of the process. It's kind of like the child may not understand why there are bombs falling from the sky, that child in a third world country or something. But that child will look at it and it's as if it's discontinuity. You see, life is so profound that it's not like, I don't want to say everything's programmed from before. I want to say, because that's what destiny means. Destiny means the program is written. After a while, you'll see, ladies and gentlemen, the Abrahamic religions are suggesting that we are in a simulation of an unknown creator. It's all simulation theory. That's what heaven and hell is. It is how your mind chooses to step beyond this plane of existence. It's how the pilot of consciousness chooses to navigate, and how much there's access to the honesty of intelligence, and how much there's access to, how would I say, like, you will find yourself in turbulence, of course. This is why I use the pilot analogy. This is kind of a way where I have just gently, my inner rage has faded because I have taken full responsibility for my experience. I wasn't always like that. There was a point where I was still pointing at fingers. You won't believe how many various ideas and points of view I have pointed my finger at and blamed for the cause of everything. It's like that Persian poet by the name of Ancient. Like, okay, this like from 500 years ago or something, 700 years ago, there was this poet named Sadi, Saadi. You can look him up. And Sadi, there's this moment there in his poetry where he's suggesting this imagery of he's gone to his mother and he's apologizing to his mother for what kind of person she has seen him to be. You see, that's the kind of inner agony of most children in the world. They feel that their true self is not being seen. Eventually, as the true world begins to act, that playfulness must get replaced with service. So all the energy you're using to play as a child, as you grow older, tends to move towards service. Now, service has various motivations. Because we feel that serving the collective has no value, we don't do it. Do you know if educational systems, every assignment that a child has to hand in an assignment educational system, if it had, if it was a source of income for the child, all children would get A's. You see, the reason people are not learning properly in the educational system, it's because their attention is outside of those rooms. The world is too storified. It is too solid. And that just gets boring. You know, good and evil gets boring for how many years of our history are we gonna, praise good people and condemn bad people? It's like, we should, an enlightened society that has no inefficiency. It doesn't translate chaos, and it doesn't translate order, so it becomes a rhythmic kind of producer of the moment. I find that I have to, in this lifetime, I've spoken, of course, in some of my other talks. You see, if this world, if nature, let's make it simple, was intelligent enough to have the design of individual creatures to exist, we must ask ourselves, why not also nature having to create collective beings? What if the world is alive in a way that our minds can never fathom? That requires divinity. So you see, your temple becomes the external realm. But the person in the temple has not gone there to just sit in a room. The person has entered a place where it's like the reason they take shoes off before they enter monasteries, temples, mosques, churches, or whatever, is because you must put aside your ego. You must enter the notion, you must be introduced to divinity, not through a dishonest moment. And unfortunately, because people don't put an effort to really wonder about what's happening as the moment, they never really change. So, you know what's very sad about 2019? So many human beings have nothing else to do but carry on past patterns. If technology has denied us, science has denied the imagination. Kind of like put a bag over a plant, over a flower. It's like, let me tell you why. Albert Einstein, there's a reason I wondered, it shocked me when I first realized Albert Einstein had a quote like this. He says something like the true sign of intelligence is imagination or something, like the quote similar to that. And so what he means is he's valuing imagination over rationality. And I was like, whoa, how? And I realized, because he realized even rationality is imagined. That's the wisdom of the moment. as we move around language, as we become unchained, it's very funny. The reason fear exists is because you have not realized you are the whole moment. The games of the personality, I don't know how long. I think for the next like 2,000 years, maybe. I hope not. I think maybe, let's say, hopefully in 7 years, there will definitely be a challenge for the human species. We will either evolve beyond language, or we will be lost in it. We will either listen to the world, or we will not listen to it. Technology seems to be listening to itself. This is why there was always a question. Some great philosophers, their names don't come to my mind, but I see their personalities behind that. They have asked this question that can an individual do what the whole world is doing? We human beings, we have to maintain our civilization through valuing what we have in common. Excuse me. When civilization values what it has, its differences more than its commonality, it begins to become mechanical. When it values its commonality, it in some sense, it advances. What you have in common with the world is how your eyes have witnessed the phenomena in a similar way as another. You see, for me, it's very easy to fall in love with a person's outer appearance, but I feel that's just the external game. Then the inner reality has to do with the alignment and compatibility of the mind of the beings. So what I'm saying is that, trust me, energy doesn't care how it looks like. Consciousness, that's what the soul is, conscious energy. Energy that's conscious, it's being energy. You can't have a better definition for the soul. I understand why they said it's easier to talk about things than to do things. Because talking can get the idea across that takes less energy than physical movement. That's pretty much the position of the mind. It moves language through your biological structure into that's what speech is. Everything you see can change because the world is changing. So what I'm saying is, it's like the good and bad are getting boring. People now are getting pushed to wondering about new dimensions. You know what loneliness in a civilization is doing? I saw this documentary about people in Japan dying alone in their homes. And I'm like, wow. That's kind of like, of course everybody dies alone, but But you die alone, the idea of you dismantles. But that which has observed the idea of you remains. And that which remains is attributeless, therefore no dimension, no lifetime can be it. You see, this is why after you look at metaphysics a little bit, you begin to see how it's all projected through language. When you realize people's notions of life are based on language, you begin to see the grand illusion. So, but what is the value? I wondered, why is the idea of the beyond, or a sort of living eternal consciousness important? Like, why should we care? And I realize on some level we shouldn't care, because it's like just a one side of a duality. It's like one goalpost on a soccer field. There's many soccer fields, you know. I don't know. I think our lives are more aligned to how we perform in front of our own being, rather than kind of like just orient. I feel there's something about the unknown that makes the person sacrifice their normality, because the unknown is there. It's like the saber-toothed tigers in the bush. There's so much terra incognita on our planet, so much unknown, so many things not known. This is why the creative arts is like a gift. Let me tell you what's going to happen. Automation is happening technologically. What does that mean? Like, is happening globally. Automation. So what that means is probably in the next hundreds of years, we are going to see a less physical world and more the evolution of a body that has a mind, or is carrying around a mind and a brain, to a mind that is projecting presence in the body. It's strange, but we become the light beams of the sun. For me, there is no such thing as death. And that's strange, right? That's an incredibly strange concept, but let me tell you how I debunked it. Because what I'm calling life is just light. Without light in my eyes, what visual, do you see what I'm saying? We are data. We are existential data right now. This existential data, it's constantly sculpting experience, and the experiencer has to, the pilot of consciousness has to find the platform, you know. You got to start building the strength through the way you're living. This is what honor did. Honor was a kind of like greater, the more greater application of the conscience, and it was the kind of eternal application of the conscience. Honor was something where you are keeping something from the past alive in every moment of your life. That's honor. And when you forget, you see, that's the moments where the person dishonors themselves, when they forget. When they forget how they have walked so far. You gotta know how to navigate through like in your moment. There's gonna be movement and there's gonna be noise, and you gotta comprehend this. And then there's going to be stillness and silence, and you gotta be able to be content with that as well. I I can say that the fog of cruelty, its evolution, we evolved from animals, so there's like a bit of a residue of savageness and wild living. And we will only care about the beyond when we're ready to pass our moment. It's strange. We hold on to many things that eventually we will let go. We try to have a sort of singular morality in a multidimensional landscape. That's what, to be honest, society is. It is an incredible theme park. I'm trying to kind of ask myself, okay, the species has been cruel and savage and animal-like. What is a way that it can move beyond that? And the only solution comes to me is self-awareness. You see, there is no, the era of leadership is dead. There's no longer anything that's called leadership. Let me tell you why. Because the responsibility of self-evolution lies in the self. There is something in the hand of your moment that is the vision of your mind. And the mind is something that it is dismissed. You know, it's only brought up when somebody's like, you know, when language shakes the world a bit. Your mind is your attention. Your attention is a sword and a shield. What do I mean by this? It is a shield in the sense that in one way, how the world is changing is just being received, so you are guarding yourself. This attention in the moment, based on the biology, is being a guardian of its intelligence. So your mind has a self-protective dimension. Okay, then there is, in some sense, the sword. How your attention is being like a sword. It is in the previous mode it was receiving. In this mode, it is expressing. It's how your mind becomes. It's how, like, in one way you're looking out at this changing world and you're like, okay, I'll stand my ground. In another way, you look at it and you're like, I'm running in. I'm marching in. You know. So you see the difference is, of course, these are qualities. You see, I learned how to walk in my mind. I learned how to relate to the ideology. So for me, intelligence, it's no longer, I had, like, before I had many structures of kind of memorized and regurgitated kind of like stuff, like the educational system kind of like gave me it opened my attention to knowledge in a way where it was mainly it was too fast. People, their intelligence doesn't all move at the same speed. What I mean by that is that curiosity moves in various directions. Therefore, there can never be one curriculum. The educational system wants children to adapt to it. Children are saying, you should adapt to us. We're all different. You see the kind of situation we're in. So eventually, this sword and shield that are various ways your dimensions happen, you branch out into it. If you branch out into the external, you will have to study every sort of science or written text about elemental existence. You gotta understand particles. You see, it's kind of like because the particles scientists are discovering are so small, their consideration it will always be abstract. It's as if the dude kind of broke the what was in like the nucleus of an atom, And suddenly, in that moment, the person's like, yo, I'm calling this quarks. It's like, I'm telling you, we're breaking up the world and filling it up with language and thinking. We have seen. The issue is there is a kind of box over the species. This box is the box of fear induced out of thinking that your temporality leads to nothing. I mean, that's the easiest thing to do. It's like a child before learning language, it's like it has no ideas on any sort of philosophy. This is why you gotta be playful with language ultimately. Sorry about that, guys. I needed intermission. Yes. Okay. You have to care for something in order for it to evolve. Literally, your attention, whatever goes on, that will move forward. This is why they say history is written by winners. The reason is because the attention of the people is limited. It's all stories. Stories that we access in different ways in accordance to what we have personally experienced. You see, some people may not consider this, but the invention of the camera was divine because it was for the first time an ability for one moment to, in some sense, carry on one sensory, one image. That is the power of light. It allows views to, in some sense, carry on. It's all too organized. I have this book I'm writing. It's called, it'll be out soon. It's called God-like Spheres. It's kind of weird. It's like our eyes are orbs, and all structures, celestial phenomena, it's like major ones are all like a sphere. It's like the cosmos is one giant onion. Some onion farmer has probably tears in their eyes if they heard what I feel it's your relationship with language changes. Of course, those people who are multilingual, they can speak many languages. Their minds has access to various cultural programs pretty much. Language is a cultural program. It evolves, and it evolves quicker than various. It's as if like this world is kind of funny. We don't have time to think, and that is why the end result for many is tragic. You see, it's because you hold your life in such high value that when your end comes, you feel it will lose a lot. That's the issue. It doesn't. That this is the notion of the ego. It is holding itself at such high value that every moment it suffers when that value reduces. But when you are completely devalued, once the mind frees itself from the animalistic desire, you will breathe as the future of humanity, as if your eyes could see how the future generations would look at the world and be like, they would look at it if, they were like, this is how the future generations now, they are forgetting. They are in competition. Because they're in competition with those before them, they in some sense become dismissive of the beacons they carry. This is why they say be kind to all beings. You know why? Because everybody has a story that will fascinate you. Every person's life is like a unique line of poetry. You find life, you have to first bring it into conscious meaning. You know? You're not just here to exist, you're not just here to survive. You are here to comprehend what it means to be alive. It's as if they ask Plato what time it is, and he accidentally heard somebody that he thought as if somebody asked him what is time, and he's like, what time is the moving image of eternity. Like, that's his quote. And so, of course, guys, your mind has had an ability to create, like, believe, you navigate your attention on a temporal dimension. But beyond that, it's like, who denies eternity? Who can deny eternity to the eternal? Who can deny the mind, how the mind of the cosmos is alive, regardless of how we live? Rather than thinking it all doesn't mean anything and being like certain atheist French philosophers. For me, it's as if both the atheist has the wrong answer and the theist is like they're both in their own rooms thinking they see it all. Language cannot own the world. It can just give you a glimpse of it. When we understand this, the wars of the minds of men end. That's when cruelty goes away, and for the first time, newer ways the intelligence evolves occurs. You see, this is the issue. I think because we're so objectively oriented, we have decided a technological reality that makes the objective seem better is more better than how naturally our minds could have evolved. Can you imagine if the Industrial Revolution never occurred? I'm not saying we should get rid of technology, of course, I'm just trying to share a viewpoint here. Imagine the Industrial Revolution never happened. Imagine technologies and inventions were never made. We would have to adapt. The imagination would be limited. It's very fascinating, it's like some people may not believe this, but free will was an invention. The invention of free will in the eyes of a conscious one. I want to share some quotes from this Sufi poet named Hafiz Shirazi. He's this kind of like mystic poet, and I want to go a quote tunnel. It's like that part of these talks where I just kind of like zoom in on one person and read as many quotes of them as I can, simply to kind of show how that person's mind was opening up to me. So Hafez, this poet, says he's in the same caliber as Rumi. He says, stay close to anything that makes you glad you are alive. He says, your love should never be offered to the mouth of a stranger, only to someone who has the valor and daring to cut pieces of their soul off with a knife, then weave them into a blanket to protect you. Hafez says, I have learned so much from God that I can no longer call myself a Christian, a Hindu, a Muslim, a Buddhist, a Jew. The truth has shared so much of itself with me that I can no longer call myself a man, a woman, an angel, or even a pure soul. Love has befriended me so completely, it has turned to ash and freed me of every concept and image my mind has ever known. Hafiz says, I wish I could show you the astonishing light of your own being. He says, I once asked the bird, how is it that you fly in this gravity of darkness? She responded, love lifts me. Wow. Hafiz says, your heart and my heart are very, very old friends. He says it happens all the time in heaven, and someday it will begin to happen again on earth. That men and women who are married, and men who are lovers, and women who give each other light, often will get down on their knees, and while so tenderly holding their lover's hand, with tears in their eyes, will sincerely speak, saying, my dear, how can I be more loving to you? How can I be more kind? He says, be kind to your sleeping heart. Take it out into the vast fields of light and let it breathe. He says, I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, how are you? He says, I have 1,000 brilliant lies for the question, what is God? He says, if you think that the truth can be known from words, if you think that the sun and the ocean can pass through that tiny opening called the mouth, oh, someone should start laughing. Someone should start wildly laughing now. Wow. He says, what do sad people have in common? He says, it seems they have all built a shrine to the past and often go there and do a strange wail and worship. He says, what is the beginning of happiness? It is to stop being so religious-like. He says, fear is the cheapest room in the house. I would like to see you living in better conditions. He says, this place where you are now, God circled on a map for you. He says, I am in love with every church and mosque and temple and any kind of shrine, because I know it is there that people say the different names of the one God. Oh, wow. He says, what happens? What happens when your soul begins to awaken, your eyes and your heart and the cells of your body to the great journey of love? Like this whole thing was a question. He says, what happens when your soul begins to awaken your eyes and your heart and the cells of your body to the great journey of love? He says, first there's wonderful laughter and probably precious tears, and 100 sweet promises, and those heroic vows no one can ever keep. But still God is delighted and amused. You once tried to be a saint. What happens when your soul begins to awaken in this world, to our deep need to love and serve the friend? Oh, the beloved will send you one of his wonderful wild companions, like Hafiz. says you yourself are your own obstacle. Rise above yourself. He says what we speak becomes the house we live in. He says when all your desires are distilled, you will cast just 2 votes to love more and be happy. The heart is a 1,000-stringed instrument that can only be tuned with love. He says admit something. Everyone you see, you say to them, love me. Of course you do not do this out loud, otherwise someone would call the cops. He says still though, think about this great pull in us to connect. Why not become the one who lives with a full moon in each eye? That is always saying, with that sweet moon language, what every other eye in this world is dying to hear. Run, my dear, from anything that may not strengthen your precious budding wings. Run like, it says, run, my dear, run like hell, my dear, from anyone likely to put a sharp knife into the sacred, tender vision of your beautiful heart. Wow. He says there was a 4-year-old child. He says, carry your heart through this world like a life-giving sun. An awake heart is like a sky that pours light. He says the sun will stand as your best man and whistle when you have found the courage to marry forgiveness. When you have found the courage to marry love. Wow. Listen, this world is a lunatic sphere. Don't always agree it's real. Even with my feet upon it and the postman knowing my door, my address is somewhere else. So that's all the quotes of Hafiz in one page. I find that the mind has a very great ability to animate itself. It looks in the eyes of a living soul. Your breath is why your mind moves. And without this intention to breathe, no biological phenomena would occur. It's a unique reaction, and it's like something responded to oxygen and became this. It's an exposure to an elemental kind of situation that the biological existence is this. But when we look at the eye of the moon, we no longer see a shadow. Thanks for tuning in, guys. I feel this talk was a bit all over the place, but I want you to know that you're alive. Let's say, you have one lifetime, objectively speaking, and that means you have a unique opportunity. And this unique opportunity is not just, all I'm saying is don't ignore the external world, like just live as you are. Just be mindful that there is more to your intelligence than meets the eye, literally. Much blessings and namaste. The fog of cruelty fades when it was no longer necessary to be there.